Countries around the world are beginning to ease the safety regulations and opening up their economies, as part of the impact of the coronavirus begins to decline in some parts of the world. Now, though some experts believe that this has ushered in a new world economic order. And for Nigeria, the focus is on the manufacturing sector, agriculture, and of course, human capital development. This is a portfolio on NTA News 24 reaching you from Abuja, Nigeria's capital. I'm Chimobi Walter Naji. And today our discussion will focus on the African Continental Free Trade Agreement and its implementation plan. But first, let's take the news segment with Comfort Amadou.
We begin with reports on efforts by the federal government to recover the economy in post-COVID-19. The Budget and Planning Office under the Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning, saddled with the responsibility of ensuring proper planning and execution of economic principles to help navigate Nigeria through the impact of the COVID-19. On the economy, held a virtual meeting with all state commissioners for budget and planning. The meeting is aimed at reaching a common approach in tackling the impacts of COVID-19.
Again, Mr. President approved that 1,000 persons be employed in each local government area, which translates to 774,000 jobs under the Public Works program.
And meanwhile, Central Bank Governor Godwin Emefiele has assured investors of the security of their investments in the country, despite dwindling revenue from the sale of crude oil globally. The governor said investors interested in repatriating their funds from the country were guaranteed to do so, noting that the bank had put in place policies to ensure an orderly exit. He, however, urged investors to be patient as such repatriations are processed, owing to the bank policies of orderly exit of investments. And speaking on the plans of the bank in tackling the economic impact of COVID-19, he said the CBN, in partnership with the Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, is committed to galvanizing the manufacturing sector in a bid to reset the economy.
3.9, almost 4 million people have been infected. Almost 300,000, 276,000 people to be precise, have died. Right? The US has the highest number. In Africa, Nigeria is running closer to countries like Egypt, Algeria, South Africa. So what does that mean for us? That as a country, we need to really work very hard. And perhaps this is a good opportunity for us to see to it that we prepare ourselves as a country in Africa, the largest economy, to get our manufacturing sectors to work.
Nigerians' gross official reserves weakened by $1.64 billion in April to $33.52 billion. This is largely due to the exit of foreign portfolio investors. A recovery of salt is assured now the IMF has disbursed $3.40 billion under its rapid financing instrument to tackle the impact of COVID-19. And that concludes the news. Do stay tuned for more on the portfolio with Chimobi Walter Naji. Many thanks for watching.
Welcome back. The takeoff of the African Free Trade Zone, or AFCFTA as it is called, which is being referred to as the world's largest free trade zone, has been delayed and would not take off on July 1st, 2020, as was earlier planned, due to disruptions caused by the coronavirus outbreak. Now, this is according to the Secretary General of the African Continental Free Trade Area, Wankele Mene. The 55 National Continental Free Trade Zone would, if successful, create a $3.4 trillion economic bloc with 1.3 billion people across Africa and constitute the largest new trading bloc since the World Trade Organization was formed in 1994. Well, today we have the acting chief trade negotiator and Director General, Nigerian Office for Trade Negotiations, Mr. Victor Lehman, to digest some of the impact of the COVID-19 on trade negotiations and the AFCFTA implementation plan. Welcome to our studios.
Thank you. Thanks very much for having me.
All right. So, what is the situation, with the African AFCFTA, given the takeoff date has been postponed due to the lockdown by many countries occasioned by the coronavirus? Can you give us an understanding of what the situation is at the moment?
First of all, I think the coronavirus has impacted the world in ways that we would never have imagined. No one would have ever thought that the world would shut down totally across the world. It's almost like a mini Armageddon, although no one knows how Armageddon would look like. But so therefore, I mean, if you on the trade side of things, I'll give you a few context. 54 countries at the start of the pandemic activated export restrictions, particularly on essential medical supplies and medicaments as well as PPEs. Countries were grappling to understand the unfoldment of the disease itself, because it's very new to the world and the way it affects those that are infected with it. And to that extent, you don't really have free flow of goods. Perhaps to some extent services are still going on, but in terms of free flow of goods and the movement of natural persons, that has to a large extent been relatively 90 or 95% stopped. So you would not expect normal trade flows in this kind of circumstances. Because what you would expect to have a free trade arrangement would be to have open borders. You would want to have people coming together to trade. You would not have a situation where you have social distancing. So the pandemic has affected the AFCFTA. First of all, when we started, when it began, all negotiations were stopped. And thereafter, we were now thinking about how to reopen, how to perhaps engage either virtually or otherwise, and again looking forward to the implementation date. Then we realized this is an impossibility, because you cannot have the dynamics, the tools and the mechanics of trade that are not working in full capacity. If you in that situation, there is no way you can activate a free trade area arrangement such as the AFCFTA. And so to that extent, therefore, it's sensible, it's advisable, it's logical that you would put a hold on the implementation start date. Because if you still want to stick to the implementation start date, which is supposed to be the 1st of July 2020, you would be making a caricature of the entire agreement itself. Because at the moment we don't have the list of the tariffs, concessions when it comes to goods. Those lists, the A, B, and C list are not there. That is the general list, the exclusion, and the sensitive list are not ready. As we speak now, those lists are still being negotiated by countries. Some countries have not achieved the level of up to 30% negotiation on that list.
So are you saying that even without the impact of the COVID-19,
yes,
the implementing countries will still not have been able to meet up with the date?
Well, we would have had some sort of built-in agenda going forward, or a built-in work program, or outstanding issues. that we would still have to be able to negotiate on these issues while the implementation start date remains. That would have been the case. So we would have still had to continue to negotiate on these issues. At the ECOWAS level, we have to some extent achieved a level of harmonization up to say 90% when it comes to the schedules. And that is schedule on goods. But as for services, we are also about 50% at the ECOWAS level. So we would have been able to achieve these about a month or two after the implementation kickstarts. So the COVID-19, however, has even made that more difficult, because negotiations, you have to be able to sit side by side with each other to negotiate. What the virtual platforms avails us currently cannot take care of the kind of negotiation that we are involved in at the AFCFTA level, because we have 4 languages. You have the English, you have the Arabic, you have the Portuguese, and you have the French. And then you need interpreters for these 4 languages. You need to put up the documents on the screen for all of these 4 languages. And to that extent, the virtual arrangement that we have now would not be able to provide that. So it's sensible that negotiations are at least in abeyance until we begin to see an abatement and until we begin to see a way of controlling this pandemic, the spread of this, until we begin to be able to address the issue of social distancing, because that is a core problem. If we have social distancing within any economy in the world, you would not have that economy working in full capacity. I mean, there's no way. For instance, we are 1 meter away from each other, and so if we are going to have a meeting in this room, it wouldn't take. If this room previously used to take about 10 people, to reduce it to 5. And so therefore, all negotiations have been stopped. Everything has been, most of the things we're talking about now are on policies, on regulations, because these are also important in order to kickstart a free trade area, because we need to achieve that policy convergence, policy cooperation, regulatory convergences and cooperation as well. So this is the time that we now have to come together and look at our various policies and look at our various regulations and look at, of course, standards and quality, and try to uniform all of this across board to ensure that when we actually, to kickstart, the trade under the AFCFTA come 1st of January, possibly 2021, that we would all have all of these engine of trade, engine of growth in place, fully put in place. Thank you.
Okay, so but then one would want to ask, if with all of this you've just enumerated, if the implementation eventually takes off, probably next year or say whenever it is that it takes off, we were looking at initially having a pool of $3.4 trillion, as a block
in investment.
Yeah, in investments.
Yeah.
Do you still see this possible?
That's a possibility. But again, you would. We are looking at a global crisis in terms of economy as well as health systems.
Yes.
And we may not be able to have the same capacity relating to finance, investment, economy, because some of this investment would have to flow from outside of the continent. So companies and businesses have been impacted negatively. And what they would therefore want to do at this point is to hold off and see how the situation unfolds, because now nobody can really tell. By 2021, no one is even sure how this pandemic would unfold. So no one can predict what happens in 2021, when the AFCFTA kickstarts, But what we can do is to still stay optimistic that, yes, amongst ourselves within Africa, we can achieve a certain level of investment and a level of independence from outside contribution or assistance or aid. And I think, in all honesty and modesty, the COVID-19 provides us with a rare opportunity in Africa to look inward, to be less dependent on foreign aid and assistance, to trade more with ourselves, to be able to cooperate and to partner more, to be able to build technological hubs, to be able to build manufacturing hubs, to enhance our capacity and capabilities in several sectors, such as you look at the economy, you look at manufacturers, you look at services, telecoms, financials, fintech, and the rest of them. Yes, so yes, we're looking at that level of ambition of over $3 trillion, $4 trillion dollars actually, over $4 trillion. But no one can really say whether we would be able to achieve that or not. But I think what we can do is to still stay optimistic, is to build on the things that we have done, is to come together while this implementation has been is in abeyance, whilst the negotiations are not currently ongoing. We can come together and look at our national policies, and look at our regulatory framework, and look at our institutional efficiencies, and make sure.
I was just about getting to that point.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, you're about the fourth person I'm hearing, say that the COVID-19 has actually opened up doors of opportunities for African countries to make use of. The CBN governor did say that yesterday in a press release, and we do hope that Nigeria would make good use of that. But then, for the benefit of our viewers and, of course, for the purpose of clarity, can you give us an understanding, of where we are at the negotiation table as a country?
Where we are at the negotiation level is that, we have the outstanding issues that are still hanging.
The three components of the negotiation, are they done with already?
The three components, when we talk about phase 1, 2, and 3.
Yes.
No. We have not. We're still in phase 1, actually. We've not even kick-started the phase 2. We're meant to kick-start phase 2 in April this year. And of course, the COVID is upon us, so we cannot do that. But where we are with the phase 1 negotiations is we are almost there. But there are a couple of things still hanging. The rules of origin is still hanging. We need to negotiate and finalize that. Rules of origin in terms of criteria that allows goods within the AFCFTA arrangement. You're looking at, for instance, we have edible oil, and we have automotive still hanging, and we have sugar still hanging. So these are things that we should conclude. And I am also hoping that during this time, the countries will take the time to cooperate and to work with each other to see, areas of convergence, so that when negotiation resumes, we would then almost agree on everything. And on the various annexes, some of those annexes are still pending. And so that's where we are with the first phase of the negotiations. And of course, as you know, Nigeria signed as the 53rd African country in Niamey on the 7th of July 2019, followed by Benin Republic as the 54th. The only country that hasn't signed, anyway, is Eritrea hasn't signed. So currently you have 54 African countries. And now then the agreement has come into full force. Has entered into force. The threshold for the agreement to enter into force is 22, and we've since made that threshold as at 30th of April 2019. Then on the 30th of May, is the agreement entered into full force. And currently, in terms of countries that have both have signed and ratified and deposited the instrument of ratification with the AUC, which is a depository, that's about 30 countries so far. And as you are aware, Nigeria has not ratified yet. The reasons are clear. We need to capacitate. We need to build capacity. When it comes to competitiveness with other economies, we need to be prepared for that. In the area of power, particularly, we need to be able to make sure that we have that in place. As you know, the current government is doing a lot to be able to address that. And then in the area of other kinds of infrastructure, road infrastructures, the current government is also doing a lot. But it will take years to be able to repair the decay that this country has gone through in terms of infrastructure. Because it has been decadent over the years, over the past years, and so it will not only take one government to address this. It has to take, series of successive governments to be able to address this issue. So we need to address the infrastructure problem that we have. We need to look at institutional efficiencies, institutional effectiveness. And the need for inclusiveness, the need for the access to credit, the need for looking at the cost of money.
I'd like to continue at that point because our time is quite fast spent on the program. Many thanks for coming to the show. We've been speaking with the Acting Chief Negotiator and Acting Director General, Nigerian Office for Trade Negotiations, Mr. Victor Lehman. We thank you very much for being part of the show today.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
And I hope you stay safe.
Thank you.
Keep well.
You too.
Thank you.
All right, it's now time to join Bosode Ebel to give us an update of what's been happening in the capital markets in the last couple of weeks and what Nigeria seems to be getting from the opening up of the lockdown.
Hello and welcome to the Market Review segment. The stock market report for the week ended May 8, 2020 indicates that there was a total turnover of 1.6 billion shares worth 18.2 billion naira in 28,791 deals traded last week by investors on the floor of the exchange. The NSE All-Share Index appreciated by 4.45% to close the week at 24,045.4, while market capitalization stood at 12.5 trillion naira. All other indices finished higher, with the exception of NSE ASEM, which depreciated by 0.18%. The financial services industry led the activity chart with 1.3 billion shares valued at 11.8 billion naira, traded in 17,117 deals. The services industry followed with 53.5 million shares worth 128 million naira in 1,003 deals. The third place was the consumer goods industry with a turnover of 53.4 million shares worth 2.7 billion naira in 3,607 deals. The top three equities were FBN Holdings PLC, Guaranty Trust Bank PLC, and Zenith Bank PLC. They jointly accounted for 774.2 million shares worth 9.7 billion naira in 7,516 deals. Exchange traded products (ETPs) had 17,476 units valued at 1.5 million naira, traded in 10 deals. A total of 2,438 units of federal government bonds valued at 2.5 million naira were traded in the week in 6 deals. In the week, 39 equities appreciated in price, 22 equities depreciated in price, while 102 equities remained unchanged. And on the global markets, investors continue to watch for development on the coronavirus front amid hopes of global economies reopening as social distancing measures are eased. Africa's stock market began early trading for 11th May mixed, with Ghana's GSA Composite and Tunisia's Tunidex posting gains. European stocks traded in positive territory on Monday morning as lockdown lifting continued throughout the continent. Stocks in Asia traded higher on Monday afternoon as hopes rise on economies reopening, even as U.S. reported record job losses in April. Hang Seng Index gains among the region's major markets as it surged 1.53%. That was the market review for 8th May. I am Bossday Abel.
Welcome back, and many thanks, Bosse, for that expose. And it's on that note that we come to the end of this week's edition of your favorite finance and economy program, The Portfolio, coming to you from the stables of NTA News 24. We do hope that you keep a date with us again next week for another interesting package. From all of us here, we say bye-bye for now. I'm Chimobi Walter Naji. Have yourself a wonderful week.